we're finding a lot of people. By doing testing, you're finding people. So we're doing 14, Germany's doing 3, South Korea's doing 3, and I think they're number 2 and 3. So we're way ahead of everybody. But when you do that, you have more cases. So a lot of times the fake news media will say, you know, there are a lot of cases in the United States. Well, if we didn't do testing at a level that nobody's ever dreamt possible, you wouldn't have very many cases.
Follow-up, how does it compare on a per capita basis? Obviously, the United States is much larger than a lot of these European countries.
Yeah.
How does our testing compare per capita?
Sure. Do you want to do that, Deborah? Per capita?
Our testing now, we're almost up to 4%. So some of the European countries are at 4 to 5%.
And you know, when you say per capita, there's many per capitas. It's like per capita relative to what? But you can look at just about any category, and we're really at the top, meaning positive on a per capita basis too. They've done a great job.
But by the way, just so you know, per capita means per capita. It's like per person. It's Latin, sort of like per head. So per capita means per capita. I do want to say this, though. The United States has failed on testing from early in the process. But Dr. Birx is right. We are making progress. And we're now, I think, probably
as best we can,
the fourth or fifth in the world per capita. So that is good news. The progress continues. Unfortunately, a lot of the testing has not been as accurate as we would like. But listen, that's going to happen when you have to, out of necessity, lessen certain regulatory guidelines to get tests out into the market as quickly as possible.
Well, I know, but it's also, I guess, in many ways, very frustrating to hear the president's almost illiterate analysis of where we stand on this, especially given all the advances in public health made by amazing institutions in this country. Where we are number one would be in advances in public health, except the leadership in this crisis, and the president's analysis by the day just doesn't reflect that. And your column in the Washington Post, which is entitled, "I Believe in American Exceptionalism, and That's What Makes This Crisis So Hard to Accept," really resonates, Joe.
Well, I do believe in American exceptionalism, and I think that if you don't believe in American exceptionalism, you must have your own ideologies or your own personal prejudices that don't allow you to see the facts that are right in front of you, especially when it comes to science and math and our universities and our healthcare system, the doctors that are considered the best in the world. Of course, we all know the United States military might and economic prowess, they remain unrivaled across the globe. America's cultural influence and soft power remains enormous, and that's even with the most inward-looking president in over a century sitting in the Oval Office. It should also surprise no one that a country that was born in the Age of Enlightenment would thrive so mightily in science and medicine and technology. Think about it. From Ben Franklin's experiments with electricity to Steve Jobs' creation of the iPhone, American inventors have fashioned brave new worlds. Then they wiped clean the boundaries of those ages before imagining new ones and creating new ones in the blink of an eye. Whether it was American visionaries who were flying across the windy shores of Kitty Hawk in North Carolina, or Air Force pilots who were learning how to guide spaceships under the surface of the moon. And think about this. Immigrants traveling to our shores have been so pivotal in shaping American exceptionalism, inventing the telephone, the television, and the internet technology that now defines our daily existence. You know, it was also an immigrant from Germany who visited FDR's White House and pushed that wartime president to launch the Manhattan Project. In so doing, Albert Einstein and a lot of other immigrants that were fleeing Nazi Germany helped America and its allies win the Second World War. Our country's pioneering spirit is also extended to medicine, whether it's through the creation of life-saving vaccines, one after another through the years, the development of blood transfusions, or miraculous breakthroughs in the field of organ transplants. And one survey after another, American doctors are viewed as the best in the world, and our universities remain unrivaled. And did you know that since 1950, approximately half of all Nobel Prizes awarded in the science fields have gone to Americans? Almost half. With the United States possessing such dominance in the fields of science and medicine and technology, how can that same country with just 4.3% of the world's population be responsible for almost 30% of the coronavirus deaths that have been reported across the globe? Now, Donald Trump's conspiracy theories are his followers, who are conspiracy theorists, would like to blame the deep state, would like to blame hapless bureaucrats for being asleep at the switch when the pandemic hit. But man, the record's really clear here. And it shows it was the president himself who repeatedly ignored all signs of a gathering storm. After all, it was the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention who learned about the outbreak in Wuhan, China, on the last day of 2019 and immediately began developing reports for the Department of Health and Human Services. Within weeks, Trump's White House had received similar warnings from the Pentagon, from the State Department, from the National Security Council, from Donald Trump's intelligence community, from Donald Trump's HHS department, from Donald Trump's Food and Drug Administration, and from Donald Trump's own staffers who put together the president's daily briefings. By the end of January, trade advisor Peter Navarro had seen enough to warn of a coming pandemic that he said could kill 500,000 Americans. But Donald Trump was dismissing the disease as one person coming in from China at the same time. So how could two people see the same warnings and come up with such dramatically different conclusions? Joe Biden came up with a dramatically different conclusion at the same time, and it was a heck of a lot closer to Peter Navarro's than it was Donald Trump's. Another month would pass after Navarro's grim warning and after Joe Biden's grim warning, and Donald Trump would still be assuring Americans that the pandemic would magically go away. As late as March, Trump declared that he was not worried about the pandemic. And his defenders on some cable news shows were actually telling their viewers that the threat from COVID-19 was nothing more than the latest hoax meant to bring down their hero. Now, by April, the president of the same country that is home to MIT, Stanford, Johns Hopkins University, Harvard, Caltech, the University of Chicago, Yale, and so many other American universities that lead the world in research. This same president publicly asked White House doctors to look into whether injecting disinfectants into the bodies of sick people could cure them from the virus. You know, the most damning element of Donald Trump's deadly response may well be his stubborn refusal to marshal the resources of the U.S. government in the face of a once-in-a-century challenge to create a Manhattan Project. For this challenge, to create a Manhattan Project for our time, to create a Manhattan Project for the veterans and the seniors who have given so much to this country and who are dying alone in nursing homes, in VA hospitals, and in retirement communities across Florida, Arizona, and the country. Instead, this befuddled former reality TV host continues to spend his time spinning wild conspiracy theories, attacking the state of Michigan, attacking the state of Nevada, and continuing his sad obsession, and it is so sad, with former President Barack Obama. The U.S. death toll is now rising toward 100,000 lost souls. Peter Navarro was onto something at the end of January. And despite the fact that we're approaching that bleak number, the only thing exceptional about this American president's management of the crisis has been his gross negligence. It's allowed so many people to die in a country that remains home to the best and the brightest innovators this world has ever known. We'll be right back. Thanks for checking out MSNBC on YouTube, and make sure you subscribe to stay up to date on the day's biggest stories. And you can click on any of the videos around us to watch more from Morning Joe and MSNBC. Thanks so much for watching.